Welcome back to EvokeCast. Today I am joined with Seth Keena. We are doing your Ask Evoke questions. I'm so excited to have Seth here. My name is Maya. For those who don't know you, I am a coach with Evoke Endurance. And today we're diving into a bunch of different questions. But to
Oh
start
yeah,
out, Seth, where are you calling in from? Where are you today in the world?
I'm in France. I'm in the Haute-Alpes region of
Love
France. Yes, it's in the Alps, and it's a warm day here. Not as bad as it has been. I think it's like 32 C, and yeah, it's a good place to be. And it's yeah. And where are you calling him from?
I am in New Hampshire and it's very
Okay,
hot here. It's 90 something degrees. I don't know what that is in C. Maybe 34?
but you have the humidity,
Can
which
you
we don't have
convert?
here.
Do you know how to convert very well?
Not while we're getting recorded. It's 30. It's I actually yeah. It's about I'm in the low 90s, but
Okay, so same,
but
same, same. Yeah,
but I don't. We have like 20% humidity here,
yeah,
which
it's a lot
you
more here. I think somewhere in the 80s, maybe. I also wanted to tell our audience because I think it's fun. I have known Seth for a very long time. He's known me for a very long time. I think our first meeting, I was probably 15 or 16 and
hmm
went backcountry skiing in our old
yes.
town where we both used to live. And I remember it being a very bad ski day. And you probably were like, we were with Scott. And you were probably like, what is this random teenage girl doing, tagging along on a random Saturday, probably because I wasn't in school. And that was my first introduction to you. And you were telling me, I think about plants or something. And I remember being like, cool, who's this? So I don't know your first memory of me, but that is the first time I remember meeting you. And
Yeah, well, I don't remember the day because the snow was bad, so I just deleted the day out of the memory.
yeah,
But
that makes
I
sense.
probably was talking about plants because I'm a big nerd, and one of the things I'm a nerd about is plants.
Yeah, and it was
So,
spring, so everything was melting. So there were some plants
uh, yeah,
there.
you can see plants. Right on, right on.
It had
Yeah,
to be spring,
similar.
or
It,
I wouldn't have been allowed to be backcountry skiing if ski season was still in session. So it must have
yeah,
been.
right. Yeah, exactly. You would have had the skis you would have had on would not have been the right ones for there. You would have been
Yeah.
on the piste. Which is my memory of you on the piste. I was with a very experienced ski instructor, and he was giving me copious amounts of tips on my brand new classic ski technique. And so I was definitely in need of lots of tips, and I still am. But I remember just all the different he was going through all his like repertoire of examples and tip kind of cues for me, and nothing was clicking. And
Mm.
then I think you said something about like, oh, why don't you switch poles to the instructor, to me the instructor, and the pole switch, and then all of a sudden it was like I'm like,
You're a
some
World Cup
famous
skier.
I'm World Cup skier. I was gonna name drop someone and I locked up. I was like Maya. I was skiing like Maya. And
Oh,
I was like, oh yeah, Maya knows what's up. So and this is just it's a small anecdote, but it relates to your coaching abilities too.
oh,
Like,
Seth.
you stick it. But it's good. Yeah. So
It's pretty fun. We knew each other way before our first company, and Evoke, even existed, which is pretty
yeah,
fun to now be coworkers
yeah,
many years later. Yeah.
totally. Yeah. I think we've known each other for about 11 years, perhaps longer. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe 12.
Longer.
Yeah.
I'm getting old.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I am.
You're not, though. Seth is not aging. Looks as young as the day I met him.
Like way older than you. Yes. No. But
Okay, so should we jump in? Should I ask you
well,
this long question? I think this is a you
speaking of
question.
getting old, I'm gonna get older by the time the question's done being
Yeah, this
asked.
is we're starting with a beefy one. Some of the other ones are a bit shorter, so bear with us, audience. First is coming from a 41-year-old male, southeastern US, hot and humid, and his sport is ultra running, and he's pretty new to it. He's about to start on our 100-mile plan. So currently, he's maintaining 35 to 45 miles outside of deload recovery weeks prior to beginning the plan. He works in the gym 4 days a week, each day centering around one of the four main compound lifts, and then accessory work geared towards optimizing running. I know once I begin the plan and ME, there'll be crossover in what I currently do week to week and what gym ME requires. And I can eliminate some of that, but I'm trying to keep sets of three times 6 to 8 reps with weights as such that generally are able to do 6 to 7 of a given weight on the third set. So almost like a max strength. I know I'll have to drop some of that work given I'm already seeing some lingering fatigue effects, and I don't think I should be there otherwise, given all the mileage and overall lack of intensity, RPE, heart rate of my runs, and the ability to maintain that mileage decently prior to gym work. I'm reluctant to drop it completely as my overall easy pace hasn't changed a ton, but noticeably have gained a bit of speed in the last 6 months since beginning the gym work. But my effort has drastically decreased on hills. My question would be that given there's a definite cumulative fatigue a runner maintains throughout most of their training period until hopefully the end of the taper period, and occasionally the end of a good deload recovery week. Is there a good delineation between normal fatigue from the conditions and phases of training versus too much and potentially leaving running gains on the table? I know Scott isn't a huge advocate for the average hobbyist to do a lot of gym work, but seeing change in ability on hills makes me reluctant to give it up entirely. But I know I should also trust the process. If it helps, I'm looking to add muscle. Oh, if it helps, I'm not looking to add muscle, just build power. Do you want to take a stab at that, or do you want me to continue reading? Because it keeps going. I feel like that's one thought.
Well, yeah, we can, yeah, address that point, for sure. Um, I mean, I like not a whole lot sounds too wrong with what's happening here when
Yeah.
you talk about, yeah, and you probably saw it too. It's like if he's talking about noticing less RPE, less effort on uphill, as well as not much changing on his day-to-day, course, um, easy runs that he's doing. Um, then if he's talking about that, it specifically is the affect of the strength work. It doesn't sound like it's having too much of a detrimental effect. He just needs to, in in a narrow answer, kind of like continue to monitor the effect of what he's doing.
4 days of strength training to me would seem like he's like this person is saying, this athlete is saying, that doesn't give a ton of time for recovery and adaptation between the strength sessions. Like I would probably encourage you to limit strength to twice a week, maybe make those workouts a little longer, but then you have a little more time between each session to kind of adapt. And then when muscular endurance comes in, I would replace one of those lifting days with the gym ME. And I think you are going to see really good gains and you might have less general fatigue going into your run workouts. But that's just kind of, but don't cut out strength training. We are really big believers in strength training and general lifting as well. So that's right.
Right. Yeah. And you can, if you know that you need to activate your glute med or whatever in some form to continue doing that versus glute med and several other exercises in a workout. Um, you know, Try to distinguish between those two workouts and choose one that's, what you just need to do. So,
And
well,
the 100 mile plan or any of our training plans does have strength written in. So if you really don't know what to do, follow the plan. That's
yeah.
what they're there for.
Yeah. And if you know that in terms of you building your uphill speed, you're are deriving a lot of gains from the weight gym, whatever your stuff you're doing in the gym versus hill sprints outside, so be it. Just go for that.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone is different for adaptation. It seems like with strength and specifically for power. So there's not necessarily like the only way to sprint faster is to go sprinting. That's not totally. This just doesn't shake out in reality.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um, next question.
Next question.
Um, cool. If this person asks if I've reached the max amount of time that I've available for training and I need to build my aerobic base, how should I schedule my weeks if I cannot increase any more the time and intensity of the sessions? Should I continue repeating the progression of the last 4 weeks? until I fix aerobic deficiency. So, you have any thoughts on that, Maya?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with aerobic base building, it does just take a lot of time. So you unfortunately probably just need to keep doing what you're doing and just over, just that accumulation of doing it. So either repeating the last 4 weeks or, if you are aerobically deficient, you're probably spending more time in zone two, and that would be a faster way to move that needle than being more in zone one, if it's not muscularly fatiguing. Um, but yeah, it's hard to get in. There's really no shortcut for building aerobic base. So you will probably just need to spend more time rather than per week hourly, but just over months and years. And that'll fix your aerobic deficiency. Seth, do you have more notes on that?
Yeah. So I agree with everything you said. And if you really want to squeeze in some intensity, but do you have no time, you could potentially alternate some
Mhm.
some weeks in of 10% of this week has intensity, and then the next week 0% has intensity. It's all the zone one, zone two. Um, so that's what I would say.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, our next question is, how do you manage downhill volume? Eccentrics are hard to recover from. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Eccentric, yeah, it's big load on the muscle. Yeah. For people I work with who it needs some progression, it just slowly is the deal. I've slowly increased the volume and intensity of downhill, kind of much in the same way you would increase the intensity of a gym muscular endurance workout, is
Mhm.
probably the likening I would give that maybe more people are familiar with, but very small incremental changes. If you consider just 10 more seconds of in a gym workout, or 10 more seconds of running downhill, it's something. So I think looking at, yeah, really small amounts rather than um, spewing in similarly like you would with like a base run, the distance you're running and the duration otherwise in your week. So you just need to be really careful. I definitely think that swimming is a therapeutic activity to do that somehow can really relieve the muscle tissue from stress of downhill. So I really like it. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Maya?
The other exercise I give a lot of my athletes who don't have downhill terrain is just a ton of box step downs. You can do a
Mhm.
lot of good work with box step downs or heel touches, as we sometimes call them too, just kind of mimicking that load. I know in it's in our rim to rim plan, I build that in with the muscular endurance.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think once you're comfortable and like injury isn't a risk, right? I think always injury is a high risk running downhill or hiking downhill either way. But I would say you can add in very little bits of downhill running, which obviously like treat it as an interval session because you will need a lot of time to recover. But that has been pretty effective as well. So
Mm.
I agree with Seth.
Yeah.
Slowly, just
Yeah.
don't
And
be.
walking downhill is fine too. It's
Yeah.
um still loading, it's still eccentric. And then maybe in the off season looking at some like regime of muscular endurance or some sort of eccentric exercises in the gym. And if you're look at muscle groups like the quads and the anterior tibialis, is it's acts to decelerate your body, is a muscle in the front of your leg, shin, and that one is often, once that guy starts to fatigue, you can have issues with you know basically the body slamming into the ground and then more load going into the quads. Um, so yeah. Next question. How much of your zone two training needs to actually be in zone two range? Does anything below that still count?
That is a great question. And it kind of depends on who you are as an athlete. The simple way I would say that is yes, you can get a lot of benefit from doing a lot of zone one training. I have talked about this with many athletes, people who walk a ton or maybe they're doing a backpacking trip with their family, so it's slower than their normal pace, but they're still getting some good aerobic benefit. What tends to happen once you become really aerobically fit is that zone two work becomes very muscularly demanding, and you actually do spend a lot of time below that zone two threshold, or you're in low zone two, upper zone one. And, a really well-trained athlete, high zone one is still can be a really decent workout. So, yes, you can definitely count time below zone two for aerobic training. Where you might see an issue with this is, let's say you only ever go on really slow, long walks and you want to get faster at hiking or running, you probably would benefit from doing some zone two work. But you can overdo that if you don't have aerobic deficiency syndrome. Seth, what would you say to this?
Agreed in all. It really depends on what you're training for, but it's remember that the top of zone two is correlates to metabolic phenomena of 50% um, contribution of fat, 50% carbohydrate. So if you've ever looked at a curve of someone's fat consumption over the heart rate, it begins quite high, usually, depending on who you are, between 80 and 99%, and then it slowly declines as you become more and more anaerobic, basically,
Mhm.
glycolytic. So there's if one is hoping to encourage the metabolism of lipids, it is happening at that lower heart rate. And I have had some athletes who are specifically trying to bolster their to basically flatten the curve of the fat metabolism, as in continue it through higher heart rates, and it's done by training in the lower heart rate zone. And then like, and I need someone to verify who said this exactly where, because I just remember talking with Scott about this a couple of years ago. But um at around people's aerobic threshold, there's still like 50% of your VO2 max is being stimulated. So um
Mhm.
in terms of doing VO2 max workouts at a high volume, not many of us can. And then, especially if you're trying to train for long events, you usually don't have time, or it's really tiring. So there's a benefit still happening of um, 50% around your threshold. So, I mean, I'm sure that definitely tapers off, but I think the point is like it's not just below zone two, nothing's happening. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
Our next question. How much downhill training should you do for a race that is an uphill in the first half and downhill in the second half? 50-50.
Um, Yeah, I mean, not to be pedantic or anything, but like enough so you can run the downhill as fast as you want, especially
Yeah.
after you ran the uphill. So, um, I don't know what this race is, but I'm assuming it's not like ridiculous amounts of up and down. I don't, like yeah, thousands and thousands of meters up and thousands and down. Yeah, if it's I would approach it that way. It's
Mhm.
kind of keep it simple in that way. Um, yeah, if you're not strong at going down, you should definitely address that. So, um,
As we said
yeah,
before,
what do you
yeah.
think, Maya? Yeah.
Like before, just little bits at a time. And I would definitely do some downhill running practice first easy and then maybe with some intensity just to get your legs ready for sure.
Hmm.
This
Yeah.
one is a specific Seth question. This next one. How can I be as beautiful as Seth? Do you have any tips, Seth? Please, the audience would love to know.
This is from
It hasn't
Albert.
aged. It hasn't aged. Just a good question. It's really important.
I think if my camera was better, you'd see aged.
No.
Albert, well, yeah, chew your food and get plenty of sleep. That's what I'll say. But if you want to see a really beautiful human, you should go to Snell Sports in Chamonix and ask for Albert. So,
Oh,
enough,
okay. Wow.
enough
Sounds like we need to
said.
get you guys on a podcast.
Careful. Okay, next question. In a base phase with aerobic deficiency syndrome, I think that's what they meant. Is
I think
interval training okay, or should it only be hill sprints?
Oh, great question. Well, a little bit depends on your goal, but yes, I do think some interval training is definitely okay, even if you have what we call ADS, aerobic deficiency syndrome. Um, as long as you're still, the goal being to increase your aerobic threshold. So if those intensity sessions are really long and fatiguing and you're taking a long time to recover from them, you're kind of, I wouldn't say counteracting, but you're slowing down the process of becoming aerobically deficient because you're spending less time in that zone that you need to work on. But I do find that, when you're building your aerobic base, it can be monotonous and boring, and sometimes you need to push it. So hill sprints are great, but I would probably still stick to something pretty short. I wouldn't do anything probably over 3 or 4 minutes, and I would only do one session a week or every 10 days to kind of, you know, just limit that time. And I would probably push more for upper zone. So you're kind of polarizing your training than doing just like what you're used to potentially of like that zone 3, where it's not really hard and it's not really easy. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I agree. And if you're someone with small aerobic engine, you might not have a lot of training history, and so if you start thinking about sprinting, be really, really careful and start slowly or with very gradual ease into it with making sure your hamstrings are strong and resilient for this, etc. Um, but yeah, you just remember like if you go just with 10% of your weekly volume of an intensity, it could only come out to be like 6 to 8 minutes of time. So if you're doing that amount of time of intensity in the week, it's probably not going to have a negative effect on your ability to do the base training that you need to. So yeah, I'm all about just do what is in moderation, do what's going to help you continue to train for years upon years, because that's really how long it takes to improve. So yeah.
Definitely. Next
Um,
question.
yeah.
Can you do zone 2 training while also doing high intensity work in the same training schedule?
Most often, I think yes. If you're talking about zone two in the same day, it's just usually better to do your intensity first in the day, and then the zone two second in the day, which it can be hard sometimes because not everyone's awake for the hard efforts. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I think. What do you think?
I would just say, just again, zone 2 can be such a like trap word in some ways because for so many people, zone 2, especially if you are doing a lot of high intensity, zone 2 might not be easy enough for it to actually be stimulating what you want. And you could just be in this like constant fatigue state. So again, really important if you're doing a higher volume of intensity that you probably are going to be more in zone 1 for those aerobic days and you're still getting a lot of benefit. So that would
Right.
be nice.
Yeah, and to that note, I think it's really good for people to, as soon as they are begin training, to really think about using intensity and heart rate to
Absolutely.
as guidelines for their workouts. So, in general, you want to keep your leg effort under a certain level. I tell most of my people like if for zone two or what I call just base training. Sure,
Yeah.
you have similar wording, Maya, but you
Aerobic,
know,
yeah, aerobic training.
yeah to not exceed something like a 4 or 5 out of 10
Hmm.
for the most part. And so this just enables you to polarize their effort, like what Maya was saying, and then you're limiting yourself metabolically as well as muscularly, you know, however
Yeah.
that shakes out. And you do get more polarization.
And you're
So
teaching yourself how to train because heart rate, as convenient as it is just a metric for intensity, but there's a lot of variation day to day. So it is really important to actually be in your body, like Seth is saying, and go, are my legs tired? Even though my heart rate's saying they shouldn't be, because it's not a perfect correlation ever. Um,
yeah.
okay. This next question, outside of Boulder and Flagstaff, what do you consider the best trail running hometowns? Oh, Seth, you're a well-traveled man. What do you think?
In the US, I would say, I
You
don't,
stay from France? Yeah, no, you're right. Only in the US do you travel.
the Alps. Um, that's not true. I'm not, the US is great. This is the US anniversary 250. Much
Woo,
love to the home country.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Um, tomorrow. Yes. As far as what I would go with my having coached, lots of people over the years, a lot of people also I've coached people in Boulder and Flagstaff, but I've worked with a lot of runners in Salt Lake City, Missoula, Montana, Washington State near the Cascade Mountains, as well as folks in the Eastern Sierra. So, but as far as living in those places goes, it's like kind of making it home. It's up to you if you how you feel about that. So, and what about you, Maya? What do you think?
Um, I mean, a similar list. It depends. Seattle is a big city with some good trail running if you're looking for that. I've coached a lot of people in Bozeman, similar to Missoula. I think it really just depends on, yeah, your lifestyle. And, you know, I also coach people in New England. The Conway area is pretty popular for trail runners and getting out. So I think depends where you want to
Yeah,
live. But I like those places. I've spent time running in those. Or leave the US,
well,
Canmore, the Alps. Yeah. Find
Kenmore,
Seth.
yeah, Kenmore is a really amazing place for running for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question: can you build your aerobic base on the Stairmaster alone, particularly if you have the old aerobic deficiency syndrome?
Heck yeah, you can. Of
Hmm.
course. I've coached many an athlete who have no access to the outdoors, and we use Stairmaster and treadmill. I think the Stairmaster is almost more effective as long as you can keep. The only thing I've seen with Stairmaster is sometimes if you aren't muscularly very strong and pretty untrained in general, you can have a hard time keeping your heart rate low enough to start out. So if that is the case, I would probably recommend the treadmill at grade first and then work up to the Stairmaster. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, sad truth is a lot of ways the machine does a better job of running the aerobic clock for you from minute zero to however 60 minute whatever,
Yeah.
because it's you can't hide from it, and you keep up or you slow it down or you step off. So if you want to peg 150 beats, it's like you do it, and your body, it knows the time, so it's doing the thing. I definitely seen people have trouble transitioning to real terrain. So
Mhm.
bear that in mind and try to do some balance and stability stuff like, um, you know, balancing work on unstable surfaces if you truly don't have access to the outdoors. Because you can have all the aerobic power in the world, but if you can't move well on the real thing, then you will have a hard time. So,
Yeah, and back
um,
to what we've been saying about downhill, like that is a real load as well. So step downs are a good way to
totally.
do that.
Yeah. Which in a gym, like we said, you can stimulate that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, next question. Heart rate drift versus nose breathing versus MAF. Can you nose breathe at a higher heart rate than MAF, and what matters more?
yes. Yeah, it's not uncommon to be able to nose breathe above aerobic threshold into zone three. I've had numerous people be able to do it. Maybe not every day, but they can for sure. Some people can't nose breathe at aerobic threshold. If
Mhm.
we're talking about aerobic threshold measured from a machine. Um, yeah, in my experience, the most useful, and useful is kind of a loaded word here, but the most useful is the drift test
Mhm.
that we use, and it's been used we didn't make it up, but it's been around for a long time. It tightly correlates to the laboratory tests, gas exchange or lactate, um, very, very tightly, like upper 90% correlation.
Yeah.
And free, it costs time, and you are, yeah, you're most importantly, you can be moving in a specific way. Either you're outside on a track or you're on the machine, hiking or running, and that's adds a great deal of importance because uh, you know it is important to stimulate your body and load it and stress it in a really specific way to measure the threshold if that's going to be the means that you're using for training. So said another way, you should measure the threshold as you would be while you're training. So
Yeah,
yeah, what do you think,
definitely.
Lana?
I mean, MAF and nose breathing are, again, they can be tools and they can be useful if you don't have a heart rate monitor, but you are going to get the most accurate results other than like a gas exchange test, probably using the heart rate drift test that's on our website and pretty easy to follow. So I would say that matters more, giving yourself an actual heart rate value versus if you can nose breathe, especially if you have a background in high intensity like CrossFit, you probably can nose breathe above your aerobic threshold. On good days, I can. And I kind of know where that is just from so much training. So I would stick to the,
Yeah.
yeah.
One note about the drift test is, especially nowadays, is the machine puts out a lot of heat. Um, the 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 motor is, but the belt that you're running on is just sliding on like a low friction surface, but it still puts out a lot of heat. And so it's good to have fans blowing the heat away from you.
Yeah.
Baggies of ice water to touching your hands, rubbing your face, things like this. So,
Really good.
and yeah, so if you're training properly for endurance, you'll have a heart rate monitor, chest strap anyway, and and therefore you already have the tools to do the drift test. You don't need premium version of TrainingPeaks to do it. You can just average a 30-minute section and then restart and average a second 30-minute section, and voila, as we would say,
Yeah.
you've got it. So cool.
The
Next,
next question, I feel like it's actually more of a Seth question than a me question because it's climbing 8,000-meter peaks, and you are more on
a
the mountain
coach.
coach
That,
side of things. So, for climbing
that,
an 8,000-meter peak without supplemental oxygen, which matters more, VO2 max or lactate threshold? They don't really determine LV1 or LV2, but we will go with that.
right. Yeah. Yeah, this is a cool question, and they're all good questions. Um, but my hunch is that VO2 max is more of a contributing factor
Hmm.
to tolerating and moving at these really high elevations. Um, you could say someone has like a really high lactate threshold, a really strong lactate threshold. Your AET aerobic threshold is as high as it could practically be, within 10%, maybe even less of your anaerobic. You've been training like a mountaineer should for years. You've been in the mountains, you know how to move well. So we can sort of eliminate some of these variables. So like if you just think about when you're that high, just above 7,000 meters, um, up at Everest, we're talking almost 9,000 meters, right? So like relative to the power output the legs are really doing at low elevation you're not going to be using that much power. It's just reduced. Mostly, I don't know all the reasons, but the brain is everything is limiting yourself based on the amount of oxygen that's available, even if you're acclimatized, right? So you just aren't going to be stressing the lactate shuttle to a high degree. You just won't be. You're not going to be, as you would be around, say 5,000 meters. And so, yeah, I just don't think the VO2 max. I mean, I do think the VO2 max is definitely going to be out the one carrying you through, the one that's going to be offering you more like services, if you will, at that altitude. So,
I would
yeah.
say though, I wouldn't put a ton of effort into training your VO2 max in for an 8,000-meter peak. Like the person who has a good aerobic base is probably going to do better regardless of lactate threshold and VO2 max. Someone who's untrained and has just been doing high intensity to increase or try to change their VO2 max probably will suffer. So I think
Hmm.
that's just the caveat I would say. Like I
Yeah.
think you're looking
If
at it from like a scientific, like what is, but I would just say
yeah.
from a training standpoint, I would not
Sure.
recommend just doing like VO2 max training because you will probably overcook yourself and you won't have
Yeah.
the base which you actually need because as you said, it's really not the power. It's like being able to put one foot in front of the other for a long
Hmm.
time with less oxygen.
Yeah. Right. And this in tolerating that and and the capacity to breathe um um and mentally tolerate that part of breathing
Yeah.
is no joke. But if you're planning to climb without supplemental oxygen at 8,000 meter peak, um, you know, training should be a very, very long ordeal. It's it's no joke. So, right. Next question. This person is a 59-year-old male. What is the best way to increase the durability and fatigue resistance for ultra runs slash hikes?
That's a great question. And I would say, for the most part, it's kind of the same regardless of age. You want to have a great base, as we've been talking about, building your aerobic threshold. But for fatigue resistance specifically, I would start with strength training if you're not doing that already. And then I would move to muscular endurance. If you have had a lot of time in the gym, that's great. I think anyone aging, male or female, spending time lifting weights really important for bone health and maintaining lean muscle mass, which has been proven to really help with the aging process and keep you healthier for longer. So I would prioritize time in the gym. I'd prioritize muscular endurance and then always, prioritize building aerobic volume and miles on your feet. And I would probably do mobility and balance work as well, because that can be something that disappears as we age. So those would be like the high level tips I would offer anyone at any age, but definitely as we get a little older, we want to be aware of the balance aspect as well.
Hmm. Yeah,
That is
same.
not.
I would. Yeah, I'm nodding a lot. The agreed. And yeah, look at the off season. I would tend to schedule more time between your races than you did maybe when you were 29 for some strength work. You because everything's slower now. The recovery and the adaptation, it's all a bit slower. So I'd also have more check-ins with the PT to make sure all things are going well. And then that kind of thing is gets important. And then lastly would be to make sure your shoes and your running form are
Mhm.
good. Because
Yeah.
I've just seen people doing all the right things and then turns out their shoes are they bought new shoes or they have old shoes or something like
Yeah.
that ends up causing a problem and it's sad. Um,
Yeah.
so
The other thing I would recommend is also thinking about including poles for hiking and running, like for ultras. Definitely getting your upper body engaged is going to help your fatigue resistance because you're putting less load on
mhm.
your legs that time. So definitely would be something to look into and doing some strength training for that. I mean, you see
Yeah,
poles used at the highest level of ultras. Like they're, they're really useful, especially as a background as a cross country skier. Your upper body can do a lot for you. So
yeah,
it's another thing.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. This athlete has a 30-kilometer race, trail race, with almost 3,000 meters of elevation over the first 15 kilometers, then back down. Do we have any pointers for them?
Yeah, this is similar to that question about um, going up and then back down.
Yeah.
Uh, I definitely would look it down as its own thing. And what I mean by that is train it kind of similarly to the way you've been training for flats and up with um, volume and intensity, intentionality, and uh, distinguishing how much volume you're doing at what intensity. So and considering doing intensity workouts down as in downhill intervals. Um, you know, One example could be, ascending for, say, 6 minutes, and then stopping, turning around, running downhill quite hard, and somewhere around your ideal race pace, for 1 to 2 minutes, pausing, resetting, taking a break, going back up and repeating. Some weight can be involved. We can use progressive amounts of increased weight to, again, progressively overload, strengthen the muscles for our descent. Um, yeah, and then as far as for this race, it seems like if you're finishing on a downhill, that being, looking at yourself and saying, "Am I good? What am I strongest at? Ascent or descent?" And um, either the tactic could be to, be really strong on the ascent if you're really good at ascending and get a big gap on everyone. So if you're not so strong on descent, to hopefully win by just being ahead. But, in this race, it definitely sounds like you want to be pretty good at be a strong descender, because
Mhm.
you could lose a lot of places on that descent. So
Yeah.
think about your tactics.
The only other tactic points I would make is if you have a really big climb in the first bit, I would either go into it really warmed, but also not start out too hot. You're going to see a lot of people, I'm sure, crushing the first 5 kilometers and then kind of gassing themselves. And I would recommend working into that type of terrain. And I would also remind you to fuel both on the up and the down because that can be forgotten. So every 30
Yeah.
minutes, put something in your mouth or drink something. Yeah,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
advice.
And downhill can be trained using conventional exercises like we were talking about before, the split squat, even single leg, sort of pistol squat
Mm,
looking things. So
yeah,
not sure how far out your race is, but considering adding some of those in, and yeah, to help
yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
that's a good advice. Um,
So this question from Albert is the key to endurance training simply doing more zone two?
I would say yes, simply, or as we've been saying, like doing more aerobic based training. If you are very aerobically fit, you probably need to do a lot of volume in upper zone one, low zone two. If you are not very aerobically fit, you probably need to spend more time in that zone two range. Kind of depends on where your fitness is. But yes, below that aerobic threshold is where you'll make the most gains for your endurance training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely comes down to time. It often does. And then endurance, it's like, well, how long do you need to endure what? Get
Mhm.
really specific about that. Like, um, so if it's 2 hours or 20 hours, it's a little nuanced, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
positive adapters. Whatever you give humans to do repeatedly, they'll adapt to it positively, so
Yeah.
it's kind of the deal.
Okay, next question. Is speed work a must when building your aerobic base?
Um, well, only if you want more speed. No, there's a lot of super fit folks out there that are they're not very speedy, and it's okay.
Yeah,
If you don't need it, you don't want it, that's okay. I As you get older, it's good to stimulate the fast, whatever, fast movement.
fast switchers.
Um, Fast twitch, yeah, punching bag, legs, fast legs, whatever. But it's not necessarily a must in terms of, um, in general. But if you literally are not able to move your legs quick enough to generate the metabolic load that you need to effectively build your base, then clearly yes, it would be a must. So
I agree with that. I don't have much to add on that one. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right. How do you manage training for both mountain bike and trail running events at the same time?
Oh,
It's tricky.
well, it's a tricky balance. You usually do see professional athletes specializing in one sport for a reason. I'll start with that. There are ways to do it. Biking can be, well, not can be, it is a lot less load on the body, so you can actually get in some good training time on the bike. I would say you could use that as recovery. The only thing about mountain biking, which I think is hard, is it does seem to kind of push you into a higher intensity zone from the athletes I've worked with. Like, even if you're taking it easy, biking uphill is usually pretty hard muscularly, and that can jack your heart rate. So I would just say pay attention to your recovery and your fatigue, because that's always going to be the limitation. If you're not recovering from your bike workouts, so then your run workouts aren't well, or vice versa, you're not going to be getting the training adaptations you're after. Uh, it would probably be wise to not stack two events like right next to each other. Like, I would probably, if I was your coach, go, okay, what mountain bike races are important and which running races are important? Maybe you have some bike races earlier in the season, running later, and you can kind of use those as cross training. But if you have like one running race one weekend and mountain biking the next, you probably aren't getting the results you could be getting if you were a little bit more specialized with your training. I'm sure Seth has some thoughts too.
Yeah, they're fun. The two of those things they thought I had and have done with people trying to do similar yet a little different sports is you can alternate blocks of time, 1 week, 2 weeks, however, uh, emphasizing one and minimizing the other. Um, it seems to work okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can pick the most valuable, you know, mountain bike workouts during a high running week and vice versa. I definitely think that there is definitely strong legs gained from biking or, the aerobic clock being run during biking does benefit one's running. It's just, um, yeah, so
Yeah.
cool.
I agree. So
Yeah.
our next question, for those preparing for a mountain guide course or assessment, roughly a year out, what do you think most candidates get wrong about their physical preparation? Ignoring technical skills, how would you structure the final 12 months? In particular, when would you focus on building the aerobic base, strength, long alpine days, big vertical gain, back-to-back mountain days, and more guide-specific preparation? How would you balance arriving with enough fitness and resilience while avoiding excessive fatigue or burnout before the course? And Seth has trained people for this before, so that's why he gets to answer it first.
So what do most candidates get wrong about their physical preparation? From my experience, believe that most folks have a difficult time with the climbing with a weight on their back. Um, Depending on where you are and which who's assessing you, you will need to climb something like 60 plus or 511 B or A with usually with a backpack that has some amount of weight in it.
Mhm.
And I think not enough candidates are climbing with that pack on throughout their preparation period. Um,
Yeah.
and I think the best time to do that training, most specific training, is going to be in like the 8 weeks before your course, kind of like or your assessment, where you're
Yeah.
putting together the physical and the sort of technical preparations. So um, yeah, and the because most guys are pretty darn good at their technical aspect. It's like usually people are pretty strong in that regard, is what I've seen. Um, but and oftentimes they can climb the letter or the number grade, whatever they need to. But doing it with the pack on, sometimes you need to wear mountain boots and climb.
Mhm.
That would also be something to train in specifically. Um, I definitely would look at one's upper limit of comfortably leading on is usually with traditional with cams, and make sure that that's not really a problem. So spending a good amount of time, you know, aid climbing and free climbing with your cams, so you know placements really well and relatively quickly, and then you also feel comfortable and can not scared of climbing above the gear. So um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's a great answer. I would almost say for like the 12-month structure, it might be beneficial to have a call with Seth or one of our mountaineering coaches because this is a lot of different things that would need to be placed. And I don't know if we'll be able to give you the best answer in this.
yeah. Most people are really tired before they're it's a very exhausting process, and I think
Yeah.
it's made to be that in a lot of ways. It's like hazing in some ways. No, but the yeah, I think kind of approaching it like you're a professional athlete
Yeah.
is can be helpful, like kind of that mindset. But
Definitely.
yeah, talking to one of us about what you're doing and where you are, what access you have. It's usually folks are all over the place, um, or they're trying to work while they're still getting their prep. So it's pretty it's quite challenging to get all this stuff together. But I recently did speak with someone training in Switzerland for his sort of assessment, and I definitely think trying to keep things simple in your mind, simple in your approach can really help you a lot. Don't try to get super fancy with fingerboarding and different types of bouldering workouts and
Yeah.
different types of uphill intensity workouts. Usually, another thing that people get wrong now that I'm rambling, I'll ramble more. Usually another thing people get wrong is adding weighted hikes to their
Mm.
training while in concurrence with their working that they're doing. They're already carrying packs up up and down um, on as far as approaches go, and then they're going and trying to do hard muscular endurance uphill pack carry workouts, and it tends to make over work them overtrain however. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I think
give
that's
us a
great.
call.
Give give us a call. Give Seth a call. Do you want to ch pick which one you want to read next?
Yes, sure. I've This person's been following the recommendation for the TSS fudge factor with vertical gain, and that is 10 TSS added to this is in TrainingPeaks. This is adding a stress factor of 10 units onto whatever the heart rate units are given at the end of a workout. So adding 10 of those for every 1,000 feet gained slash lost in a
Hmm.
workout on this person's, and this is relating to this person's outdoor runs. This person didn't do it on the treadmill since um, it doesn't have the eccentric loading of the downhill.
Hmm.
So, what is the recommendation for the treadmill? Do you have any fudge factors for treadmill?
Great question. I think it is very coach specific and athlete specific. The most important thing about TSS and any metrics is just being very consistent. I personally very rarely adjust on treadmill or Stairmaster because of the eccentric loading as well. And I know that across for any athlete, I know if they're outside, they're going to have a higher TSS score most likely than if they're inside. Um, if, for example, I have an athlete who's never outside ever at all because of limitations of where they live, I might add maybe 5 extra TSS per 1,000 feet, but I rarely do that. I do kind of keep treadmill and Stairmaster just as heart rate TSS, and then I will add the TSS for weight. If they're doing a weighted climb with on those, I do add a weight TSS for that. And that's usually like, I think I do 10 TSS per 10% of body weight that they're carrying. So If you want to add a TSS fudge factor for treadmill and Stairmaster, go for it. Just be really consistent, and then your data will actually make sense. That's really the biggest thing with any of these fudge
Hmm.
factors. Stay the
Yeah.
same across the board.
Y-
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a model, so it just has to have the same inputs. I'm similar. Usually people need to manually enter the vert gain on the treadmill into
Yep.
the workouts. So if we're doing it, we're doing it. And most folks I have do it, and then I actually do a 50% discount of the TSS. So if they give me, they say they did 1,000 feet gained, I give them that's 5 TSS for
Yeah.
me
So
on my
similar.
people. Yeah, similar. So it's everyone's a little bit different. But if someone did do like a proper muscular endurance workout on a stair machine or a treadmill, I tend to grade it similarly to if it was outside.
Yes.
So
Same.
yeah, you're saying okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think if you're doing something like a muscular endurance or zone three type work, you already are probably missing some of that stress score because of the muscular fatigue. So I'm going
Yeah.
to be adding some TSS. And it does depend how the athlete recovers too. I'm sure you have some athletes where any workout leaves them sore for 4 days, and maybe that's closer to 150. And then you have some beast athletes who aren't sore until they're 6 weeks in, and so you're maybe giving them 100 until they're getting more fatigued or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you for listening
Ooh,
to
our-
this month's Ask Evoke. So stay tuned. We love your questions. Follow us on Instagram. You can submit them via Instagram or Reddit or even at coach at Evoke Endurance. And if you have any other questions, reach out. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you everyone for writing in with your questions.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.